Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Legal Tech Hub product briefing. I'm Stephanie Wilkins, Director of Content, and today I'm here with Senne Mennes, the COO and co-founder of ClauseBase. Hi, Senne. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, Stephanie. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Before we get started, could you give us a little bit of a background on yourself and ClauseBase?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Senne. I'm one of the co-founders. I used to be a lawyer, worked for DLA Piper's IPT department in Brussels, which is also where I met my co-founder. He had already left the firm by the time that I joined, but he's a software developer before he became a lawyer. He worked as an external consultant for the firm, and that's how we had our start working together on a shared project.
And we're going to be looking at ClauseBuddy today, is that right?
That's correct. So we have two products. Clause 9 is our document automation tool. ClauseBuddy is our smart drafting tool. It's a Microsoft Word add-in. It lives inside Microsoft Word, and it assists lawyers with a range of different challenges that they face in the drafting process, drafting in the broad sense. We're going to be looking today at a couple of different functionalities that ClauseBuddy offers, but we're doing a little bit of a speed run. So we're hitting a couple of highlights, but we're definitely not going to be able to cover the full product. Instead, we're going to focus primarily on what ClauseBuddy can offer on the drafting, the reviewing, and the negotiation front.
Perfect. And for everyone watching at the end of the video, we will put a URL at the bottom so you can reach out to get more information. But then without further ado, do we want to jump into the demo?
Absolutely. Let me start by sharing my screen. And as I was saying, ClauseBuddy is a Microsoft Word add-in. It's basically a toolbox that assists with a range of different challenges that lawyers face in the drafting process. And you can see those tools set out right here in the different modules. Like I said, we're not going to cover everything that ClauseBuddy has to offer, but we are going to cover a couple of highlights from each individual. Starting perhaps with when we're talking about drafting, right? One of the biggest challenges that lawyers face is getting to a good first draft. Traditional document automation is the preferred technology for that. And that is also something that ClauseBuddy offers. So if we just take a look here, we can actually open up an example of our smart templates document automation tool. In short, it allows you to basically generate a document just by filling in a list of questions. You have your interactive preview on the right-hand side here. And if you fill out some nonsense here on the left-hand side, that is immediately entered into this sort of interactive preview. And that allows lawyers to quickly generate a first draft of a document just by filling out a couple of words and questions. Naturally, it's about more than just filling out those basic placeholders. We also offer the necessary conditional logic, things like, for example, here, right, we're able to choose between commencement date known, yes or no. And depending on that, changes happen all across the document, but especially here in this one clause, as we can see. Setting up this automation is also super easy. That's something that you can do directly from within Microsoft Word. And we even nowadays have an AI-assisted automation module that allows you to basically instruct generative AI to do the markup to prepare this document for automation directly for you in Microsoft Word. So that's in a nutshell what we offer in terms of the challenge of getting to a first draft of a document. But of course, legal drafting is more about getting to a first draft. We also have the issue of tailoring and tweaking and fine-tuning a document, specifically also in the context of negotiation. And what we're able to do with the inspiration module is we're able to extract clauses from drafting history of the legal team itself. So basically being able to search for needles in a very large haystack. What that looks like is we're searching through the commercial basket, as we call them, right, where we're looking for commercial documents in particular. So if we search for a keyword, we then get a bunch of different results, naturally. We can then filter those results down a little bit further with the help of metadata filters from the original documents that we are extracting these clauses from. So we could say something along the lines of, we want specifically consultancy agreements. So we brought those results down from almost 600 to a little over 30. And maybe we can also say that, yeah, we only want clauses from this year, and maybe we also want clauses from this author. And so with a couple of clicks, we've brought down 600 potential clauses to only 3. What we can then do, if we want to indeed insert this clause into the document, is we can just, let's say that we want, let's go with this one. We can just make a little bit of space here and immediately insert that clause. And as you can see, when the clause enters the document, like a chameleon, it automatically adapts its styling, its formatting, its layout, its numbering, its spacing, its paragraph indentation, and all of those different things automatically adapts that like a chameleon adapts itself to its environment. So that allows for a very quick document building, essentially, by stacking these necessary building blocks on top of each other. What you can also do is you can instruct our integration to basically redraft this clause a little bit to make it fit the document a little bit better. That can be done substantively by providing some kind of instruction for how the text of the clause should be adapted. Things like you make this clause neutral, but also perhaps even more interesting, automatic terminology mapping. So we can ask the AI to do some automatic mapping for us. But what we could also even do is basically have the AI give us a complete overview of all of the terminology in this clause, which we can then map. Like here, for example, we're talking in this document about the licensor and the licensee. So who is the consultant in that case? We can just basically map this term consultant to a term from the document. We then get a full list of all of the capitalized terms in the document. We can say, okay, this is the licensor. And then we just hit redraft, and then the AI is going to immediately redraft this clause for us. We can then even also insert this clause with the necessary changes so that you can also immediately see what the differences are between the clause that you've inserted and the clause that you basically pasted over. So that's the truffle hunt in a nutshell. So this is really about finding needles in haystacks. And what we also find, especially for teams that are a little bit more invested in knowledge management, is that they basically want to start standardizing and curating that knowledge, so identifying the best clauses for the best situations. And that is also something that can then be done in the quality library. The main difference between the two is that here you're searching through thousands, tens of thousands of clauses. Here you're searching through vetted, curated, standardized material, which is obviously less in quantity, but usually higher in quality. Here, for example, we can say we have different libraries for different topics. We can have a folder structure that we can browse through. We can really see, okay, these are all of our applicable law clauses. We can add additional filters of our own, additional attributes, as we call them, which we can then again also filter down on. So we can say, oh, we only want clauses that are very much in favor of the distributor. And then we can also, again, just filter on those and insert them directly like we just discussed. That's the quality library and the inspiration modules in a nutshell. What we also have is generative AI integration. So we can draft and redraft existing clauses. We could take, for example, this clause right here and then ask the AI to redraft this clause, for example, by make this clause mutual or mutually favorable. We can just insert a quick prompt, find the nuance that we want out of this. And then again, even with these clauses that are already in the document, even there, we can immediately insert those clauses. And again, the clause will automatically adapt to the style of the document. Again, we can also insert that with track changes as well to get a full overview of what the changes are.
That's great.
Yeah, and I just noticed that I didn't even fill out this prompt correctly, but it still managed to catch my drift. And then finally, one more element that I wanted to address is the reviewing functionalities of ClauseBuddy. We can review documents from a substantive point of view. Like here, for example, we're dealing with a license agreement. So I can run a playbook full of license agreement requirements on this document. These are the requirements in question. And then what I'm going to get back from the AI is a red flag, green flag analysis where it'll indicate which requirements from my playbook have been met, which haven't. And I'm then given the option to deal with those issues on an ad hoc basis. Here you can see exactly what the requirement was that the AI checked for. You can see that it is in red, and that is because if we click through to the clause in question, it says the laws of France shall govern the application of the contract, whereas our requirement said applicable law has to be Belgian. We can then also hook into our own curated library again to basically offer our own standard clause as an alternative to this, or we can have the AI rewrite the selected text, and we can basically do that for all of these individual requirements that you see here. So that's from a substantive point of view that we can really analyze commercial and legal details of this contract. But even from a more formalistic point of view, we can also run proofreading checks on this entire document. More basic things like here you can see, for example, missing definitions for capitalized terms. So the AI identifies certain terms as being written with a capital letter, but it cannot find a corresponding definition. That's a problem, obviously. Here, for example, we've got product, and we've got this term, the product, which it's written with a capital letter, but the AI cannot find the definition for this. So that's something that as a human would take a little while to catch. Vice versa. What we can also have is a definition list that contains a definition for a certain term, but that term actually no longer appears in the documents. Again, something that is just entirely superfluous. Again, something that as a human would be tricky to catch. And there's a bunch of other different minor checks that it can automate for you and that it can catch quickly in a way that probably as a human would take you a little bit longer to catch. Probably one of the more recent additions and a favorite of mine is uncapitalized defined terms. In other words, the AI can see that you're using the term royalty, for example, in this case, across the document with a capitalized R. And all of a sudden, it finds this one term, this one paragraph, where we use this term with a lowercase letter. And that can be deliberate, that can be planned, but it could also be a mistake. And in any case, the AI is here to just say, look, maybe you want to have a quick look at this. Maybe this is an issue, maybe not. It's the perfect partner to quickly ask when you're ready to send out a document to a counterparty, to a client, to a colleague. Just run a quick proofread, make sure that all of the obvious errors are out of the document.
Yeah, as somebody who does a lot of editing in my day-to-day job, I can definitely appreciate this.
Yeah, there we go. And so, yeah, that's in a nutshell what ClauseBuddy has to offer. Like I said earlier, we just took a very quick speed run through all of the major highlights. But on the drafting, reviewing, and negotiation front, I think these are definitely some of the more popular functionalities that we have on offer. And if you're interested in learning about some of the other things that ClauseBuddy can do, then you're always welcome to reach out to us.
Yes. And on that note, you should see at the bottom of your screen the URL, which can lead you to ClauseBuddy and ClauseBase, and you can find Senne and his team to ask more questions. Thank you for being with us today. That was a great demo, and I love your chameleon analogy. It was really great.
Yeah, thank you.